Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the best advice. Advice will be used interchangeably with guidance, wisdom, or coaching. However, the most appropriate term will be used at the time of explanation. So, what is real advice? What is real good advice that we can all use? Well, it should never be sugar coated. It should always be direct when possible. It should be truthful, honest, and from personal experience. It should also require little to no interpretation, very easy to follow, and easy to apply. So, one thing about advice that is passed on from one person to another is that no mind will ever absorb information that it is not prepared to receive. So, that really helps us understand if our audience is having trouble comprehending some coaching that we may give them. If their mind is not prepared to receive the information, their brain will just not absorb it, and it'll just seem like the person won't even be aware. It's just like they're disregarding that information that's being inputted into them. In my opinion, the best advice is non-conventional. Non-conventional. It's not mainstream at all. There is good advice or wisdom or guidance that is mainstream, but there's just as much, if not more, that is not advertised or broadcasted heavily because in my experience a lot of that information is on a spiritual level rather than just a professional level where everybody in the western world mostly seems obsessed with their professional journey and progress, whereas there is a spiritual journey, there's personal journey, there's a journey with other people. So the best advice is non-conventional. It's not mainstream. In one of my other videos, I talk about psilocybin use, and I'm sure with some people that may um, arouse mixed feelings, which is understandable. It's You're entitled to your own opinion and the way you feel about things. But if you do some research, um, you'll find that the things that you once felt a certain way about, with the proper information that you learn, you may change your belief or how you feel about those things. A great example is the law of attraction. It is not heavily broadcast or advertised, but it is a fundamental law that governs how our lives unfold. And there's a lot of people, notable figures in particular, that mention or state their success to the law of attraction. So that can be an example of how advice that can be really helpful and really life changing is not necessarily mainstream. So, what do most people think the best advice is? So, I've been giving coaching, advice, wisdom, guidance to a number of people, and I've also received guidance, coaching, wisdom, and advice from numerous people. However, when I give it, I try and make it as simple as possible so that there's no overthinking required. But in my experience, I think that most people think that the best advice must be some difficult piece of advice to understand or apply because of how complicated and complex the world could be. But the exact opposite is what the best advice is. The best advice is very simple, not complicated to understand, easy to follow, and easy to apply. This will lead to self reflection, subsequently or consequently, self discovery, and then hopefully improvement or change through enactment. An example of this would be Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching. A lot of the points that he made in the Tao Te Ching were very simple and straightforward, and they caused great thoughts stimulant to provide food for thought. And that could lead to self-reflection and then to self-discovery and then to enactment. So the best advice is simple advice, easy to follow. The best piece of advice I've ever gotten in my life, by far, I know it was a couple years ago. I can't remember exactly when the specific date was, or who I was giving it by. But the best advice that I ever got was to be childlike, not childish. Think about it. When you were a child, you were always trying to be friendly for the most part. You didn't have an ego for the most part. You weren't really stressed about adulting and other things to be stressed about, such as your finances, personal relationships. You were curious, you were teachable, um, you were happy, you were innocent. Obviously, if there are situations that require you to be an adult in a certain, there's certain times and places for everything. But if you don't have to be an adult, why not just be childlike? When I'm with my dogs, I'm really happy. I always play with them so much, and I notice that people are constantly observing me, and they approach me and they start talking about my dogs. And I think there's a misconception sometimes on their behalf because they see me so happy and they're like, well, how is that guy so happy? How maybe it's his dogs that are the reason for his happiness. But in reality, it's because I try to maintain a childlike just attitude, just happy, just positive, optimistic, innocent, curious, teachable. I try not to have an ego. I try and be as friendly as possible. So that was the best piece of advice that I've ever gotten. There's situations where I've had to do very adult things, and when the situation calls for it, I mature. It's not like I'm any less mature. In fact, I'm maybe more mature for understanding that crucial piece of wisdom that that many people overlook. So when we get good advice or good coaching, valuable wisdom, we tend to associate money with being the deciding factor whether or not we listen to what's being given to us. If I work hard for my money, I'm going to hold on tight to it. I'm only going to give it when I feel is appropriate and when it really will benefit me or when I intend it to benefit me. If I go to a seminar or a convention, I'm paying money to go there because I intend to learn something from it. I intend to get some wisdom. I intend to get some knowledge passed on to me. But sometimes you can get the exact same advice from people that you don't have to pay for it. I can give advice the same way that somebody else could be giving advice, but the only thing that's different between me and that other person is perhaps a label that is on each of us by the person who's trying to learn. One may be incredibly wealthy, and the other may be on the way to becoming wealthy or not even trying to become wealthy at all. But the advice is the same. It's just who are you listening to? So, how we associate money with who we listen to sometimes, this is not in all situations or instances, but sometimes it's a psychological trait where we listen to more to a person who we're paying to go see. So the person giving advice or coaching or sharing wisdom should know their audience. And a way that a coach or a great public speaker can really connect with the people that they're trying to pass on this knowledge to is to know their audience. And one of the ways they could do this is by listening and trying to find out as much information about the listener as possible. This way, they can give them the relative information that is tailored to their situation as much as possible. They, the listener will then be able to receive that information and plan appropriately within. And the speaker, the coach, should only pass on the valuable knowledge that they're going to use then or in the near future, because no mind is prepared. No mind will absorb information that is not prepared to receive. So there's no point of giving them information 20 steps down the line when they're on step number one. Give them information um, that is relative to their steps. So give them maybe information step 2, 3, 4, 5 max. You don't want to overwhelm them either. So there's all these factors that come into play when someone is giving advice or coaching someone else or dawning wisdom on someone. And a way that you know that you're getting great advice is how much someone listens to you, because they may share resources that you were unaware of. I myself love to listen to people. And 9 times out of 10, if not more, we can get into the decimals, I learned something from every single person that I talk to. And it's because I try to listen to everyone and listen intently, and I try to learn something. And I usually get resources in the process. And these resources I can use for my own benefit, or I can pass them on to others. And the same for me. When I'm talking with someone, I can give these resources that they can use that is relative to their situation, specifically tailored to them, not jumping too far ahead because it can overwhelm them. So the best advice really can come from anyone, so long as you're willing to try to listen to it and apply it. I've heard the same advice coming from two different people, but those two people different. Those two people that I got the advice from, I was at different points in my journey. So one person I may have gone at an early stage, and another person I may have gone at it at a later stage. The person at the early stage, the advice or wisdom or coaching may have not have worked at that particular time. But later on in my journey, it may be incredibly relevant and useful, and it could work because also a probable, it's probable that I have improved and I'm more confident, and then that advice, coaching, or wisdom could work. So you're always in a different place in your life. Well, what didn't work a while ago might work today. And what might have worked a while ago might not work today. So we always have to be shifting. Try not to let your ego get in the way when someone's giving advice. This is a big, big problem. And this is what stops people right in their tracks. They always say, I know so much. Or to counter that, this is what I know. And it's not conducive to their success. It's not. It's counteractive because someone's trying to help you and you're not exercising self-control at that point when you're saying, I already know that. I don't need to know that. Well, why don't you do a bit more research into that? If you know so much, do a bit more research. Just do a bit more research. If you know so much, just do a tiny bit more. Ego is a big problem. It's not fully listening. It's discrediting, disregarding potentially valuable information. I myself, I'm not perfect here, and nor is anybody, but I'm going to be the first to say, yeah, at some point in my life, my ego may have gone in my way, but now, in the past couple of years, I've been more conscientious of this. So I try not to have an ego as much as possible, even if I'm extremely proficient in something and someone tries to give me advice on that, I'm not going to jump in and butt in and will say, oh, well, you know about this, you know about this to try to impress them. I'm going to listen because they may provide me with something that I am completely unaware of. There's always more to know in this life. Don't think that you know it all. It is fatal. It is fatal to your success. So I want to leave you with this. Do you judge? I want to leave you with a question. Do you judge, question, criticize, or accept a person's advice or guidance based off the way they look, or based off of whom they associate with, or based off of how they present themselves? For example, do you value this advice even though the technology I'm using may be out of date? You know, I'm aware that the camera is not the best out there for YouTube or for the internet. But the advice is like key. This is crucial advice. So, would you disregard this information because of the camera quality? Or if I wasn't wearing a polo T-shirt, if I was wearing a hoodie, would you reject it or criticize it? Would you expect me to appear like someone else? Hopefully, this leads into some self-reflection for you to think about. You know, maybe somebody I should have taken advice from, but I didn't because I was judging them too much. You know, I judged instead of recognizing character. Recognizing character is like incredibly um, different from judging because recognizing characters, trying to see them as a person behind these um, materialistic brands or keeping up with the Joneses type of technology. So think about that. I hope I provided some food for thought. And remember, no mind will absorb information that is not prepared to receive. So keep that in the back of your head when someone tries to give you advice and put your ego aside. Please, for you, for your success, do it for you. Have a great day. Thank you for listening.